Free Energy Now.
Imagine a world in which each home has its own power generator that obtains its energy in such a way that no fuel has to be added. Imagine every vehicle being able to run without ever stopping for fuel. Imagine each appliance having its own power source that never has to be recharged. That is the world of the future. Join with us now as we track our progress towards such a world.
Welcome to Free Energy Now. I'm your host, Sterling Allen. You can join us online at freeenergynow.net. See our past shows and archives as well as what we have coming down the pike. Today is December 3rd, 2007. Our guest today is Dr. Greer. He is the founder of the Disclosure Project, which is a leading expert on UFO suppression and associated advanced clean energy technology sequestration. Organization he founded recently called AERO, stands for Advanced Energy Research Organization, was established to protect and launch a revolutionary energy technology that meets the screening criteria of self-running with at least 1 kilowatt of usable electricity. We're delighted and honored to have you with us today. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
You're welcome. Glad to be with you.
Well, we have quite a list of things we want to get through today. Talking about energy suppression, UFO technology. Ironically, today I was listening to a videotape by Dr. John Searle.
Right.
Pretty amazing technology. Give us an overview of the UFO suppression on one hand and the associated advanced clean energy technologies that go along with that, kind of a ballpark idea.
Well, what people have to understand are two sides of the same coin. We don't actually use the word UFO because that word was coined after the classified projects studying the matter had already identified them as two categories. One are the extraterrestrial vehicles, or ETVs, as they're called at the National Security Agency, and the second are what are called as the alien reproduction vehicles, which are made by Lockheed Martin and Northrop and a consortium of companies that have been studying the advanced physics behind high electromagnetic frequency alterations in, if you will, spin, mass effect, and so-called anti-gravity. So the ARVs in the early days were called flux liners, and these were prototypes being built in the 40s and 50s, and by the late 50s they were fully operational. The early ones I know of classified programs and men that worked in them had basically a 24-volt marine battery as their power-up system. Then they went over unity, meaning that they were acquiring energy from the quantum vacuum flux field, and they would go. And that was all the energy payload that they had on them. So this was a technology of over 50 years ago. But it actually goes back much longer than that. As you know, all the way back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, there were advances in energy generation that Tesla and Stubblefield and others had. And then T. Townsend Brown in the 20s began studying the electrogravitic, the high voltage effects on mass, and doing experiments. And by the late 40s, early 50s, all of his work and the Biefeld-Brown effect, as it was called, Dr. Biefeld at Princeton, who worked with Einstein, that work went black, as it were, very classified. And I have an Office of Naval Research document that describes their review of the Biefeld-Brown effect and T. Townsend Brown's work in 1951, so that by 1954, essentially all of these operations, and I think Nick Cook of Jane's Defense Weekly did a very good job of documenting this, pretty much went off the radar scope of open source material, although up to 1954, there was actually quite a bit in mainstream aerospace journals talking about this so-called anti-gravity research that was being done. So the reason, of course, for the secrecy is not hard to understand, because if you have the knowledge of acquiring energy from the fabric of space-time, meaning not outer space, but the space around us, you can completely obviate the need for oil and gas and coal and nuclear power and centralized utilities. And this, of course, is a huge part of the global economic machine, and the power elites have not wanted to transition out of those systems because of obvious geopolitical interests. I think that the secrecy that surrounds these energy systems, whether it's a guy in his garage in Idaho, or Searle in England, or T. Townsend Brown working on this, or Stan Meyer figuring out how to do the correct frequencies to split hydrogen and oxygen off water, all of these end up getting suppressed for the same reason there's been extraordinary secrecy around the misnamed UFO issue, and that is all of it deals with the fact that once it's disclosed and known as a legitimate area of scientific inquiry and known by the masses, people will realize that we don't have to be dependent on fossil fuels and oil to run our civilization. But that, of course, is the crux of the question, and that is you have a $200 trillion plus asset base known as gas and oil and coal, and there's really only a few hundred corporations and families that own that asset base, and they are inordinately powerful and have not wanted this information out. Now what we're finding, however, is that a lot of these elites are waking up to the fact that they've overstayed this energy game a little too long, and I've been having meetings with some of these folks who say, well, we really do need to bring these other things out. And but again, no one wants to do it first. It's the old problem in America, and I think in the modern world, everyone wants to be first to be second. When you start dealing with something that's extremely not only controversial, but would have huge impacts on the status quo.
I would imagine there are discussions about how to break this out in a way that it doesn't look like they've been hiding it all these years, so they don't get egg on their face for being the bad guy and keeping this technology from us.
Well, what I have been told, and I'll be quite blunt about this, is that they're looking for a group like ours or yours or some group to come together that brings out at least a Generation 1.0 version of this so that it can crack the door open, because it's very difficult for Lockheed Skunk Works to open up their little war chest of stuff and not have it be known that there's this long history that can be proven of them acquiring them, because there's an obvious inherent scandal in the fact that we are facing global warming and Mideast oil wars and geopolitical conflicts and geophysical meltdown, which is all an artificial result of this enormous mistake that happened in the early part of the 1900s and was then compounded in the mid-1900s and the 1950s with these extraordinary advances in physics and energy generation being deliberately sequestered away from the public and even ridiculed, and at times ruthlessly suppressed up to and including intimidation and apparently assassination. So we're now at the point where most of these folks, I've been told now 70% or so of the guys who are involved with these issues think that this ought to be brought forward, but there's still a very vocal and strong third of them that don't want this done. My view of it is that, be that as it may, we have to provide some leadership about this, because it's unlikely that the centers of elite power are going to do this unilaterally. I just don't see that that's the way big steps like this happen. It usually happens from sort of out in left field. A group comes in, moves this forward, and that's what AERO is trying to do. And people can go to aero2012.com to see what we're proposing to do. And we're actively looking for scientists who have a robust system that can be evaluated and proven to be a generation system that would meet our criteria, and are prepared to give people a $200,000 upfront fee for that, and guarantee at least $5 million within 2 years for licensing it and getting it out to the public. So we have very good support on our team. They're angel funders, as they were, as I might say at this point. But we have the means to do this. The question is the research